Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very short re-review of a knife that I thought was good, and Remette, the company who made it better. They added just a little detail that actually ends up being kind of a big detail. This knife operates, or the locking system, which is a nested liner lock, is actually actuated by the pivot, which is moving that liner lock out of the way. This is really cool, and in the past review, which, by the way, if you want the full details on this knife, I would urge you to check out my original review of this knife so that you can get, like, specs and all that stuff. I'm going to do minor specs here, but mainly I wanted to focus on one element here, and that's the addition of this little safety switch, which makes it to where that button cannot disengage in the open position. Why is that important? As myself and a number of other reviewers have pointed out, in the choked up position or even the standard hammer grip position, your finger can fall right on top of that button, making it possible, not likely, let me emphasize that, not likely, but possible for it to disengage. I like that Remette seems to be extremely involved in the knife community. I see them in my comment section. I see them on various social media platforms, engaging with people, talking with people. And I like how quick they are to correct things if people say, hey, this could potentially be an issue. But they do it in a way that's very accommodating for a lot of people. Basically, if you've ever been concerned that a knife that operates like this, which is a really fun way to operate your knife, and it's also a very convenient way to operate your knife. I love button mechanisms that disengage the lock. I think that's cool. I think it's convenient. I think it's, fun and fidgety, right? I don't like plunge locks, but I do like button-operated frame locks, liner locks, compression locks, because it's a nice way to get the best of both worlds. The strength of a better locking system versus a plunge lock, and the convenience and fun factor of manipulating your knife via a button. But when you have the button as the pivot, sometimes when you choke up, like I said, you could get your finger there. So the fact that they added that little safety switch there means that for the people who might be concerned, maybe didn't pick this knife up because they were concerned about that, you now have a way to basically use this knife worry-free, because this is a really good system. I'm going to go into detail there. But for people who don't care, or find that, on their version of the Peregrine Falcon, they have never been in a situation where they have thought they were going to disengage or actually disengage the lock, there's no reason for those people to upgrade to this. Or if you go ahead and pick this up and you don't care, then you don't have to use the safety switch, because it's essentially completely out of the way. And this video is about the knife, but it's also about how Remette is like, how can we make this better for essentially everybody? Now, they're still not accommodating to absolutely everybody, and I want to point out a couple of things, but considering they do seem to very much care about everybody who's looking at their knives and buying their knives, right? I'm going to do my part and provide as much fair criticism and honest feedback as possible, because I feel like Remette is in a position to really make some amazing stuff for us in the future. And if they're going to listen, then we're definitely going to talk, right? So I do like this. I think it's cool. This is a knife that I actually really enjoy and, generally speaking, recommend. But there are reasons some of you might not want to pick it up. I'll go over here real quick. Thanks so much to Remette for sending this in for me to take a look at. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Very quick stats today, guys, or specs, because I've done this review before. Like I said, check out the other review for additional details. This guy's coming in at, surprisingly, not even 8 inches, 7.75. It really does feel like a full-size knife. Blade length is just shy of 3.5, maybe 3.45. Cutting edge is about 3.35. We're going to weigh this real quick, and then we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about this system here and what's great about this knife and what could be improved in the future. 4.7 ounces, so a little on the heavy side. Not crazy, though. Your balance is coming in right behind the pivot, right? So first off, this gold ano is really cool. I do like this, and the implication here is that, and you can see my hands have dulled this, because when this came out of the box, this was essentially gold, gold, gold. And you can bring this back, right? If you have a nice high polished anodized surface, you can take a little teeny tiny bit of Windex and put it on a paper towel, and you can kind of rub it and then take the dry part of the paper towel and wipe it back off, and it'll bring that vibrance back. Obviously, these are the handle scales, so touching it again, it's just the oils from your hands are going to dull that anode. That's okay. The cool thing here is that they are willing to anodize and polish surfaces, and a polished anodized titanium surface just looks really, really good. Maybe this isn't your particular cup of tea, but what it says here is that Remette is willing to do really fun, wild, crazy colors and polish surfaces on their knives in the future, which is really great. I like that. This is an M390 blade. They are hitting those numbers between 59 and 61, which is the industry standard. I would really like to see that come up to 60 to 62. I feel like, it's still an opinion. It's just an opinion, right? But I feel like a large part of the knife community really likes to see the M390, on their blades hitting those higher numbers. And it does make a difference, right? But that's just my opinion. This knife is just as knife. It is just as knife as the last one, but it's also just as nice as the last one. This knife has good action. It's easy to actuate. I would like, slightly better access, I think, right under here to get in there and, manipulate this knife. You can use the front flipper, which works pretty well. You can also reverse flick it. You have to dig at it a little bit, but you can do that. A little bit more of a cutout here, which would change things, where they place the nested lock. This cutout, right here would have to be altered a little bit. But overall, it's very good, and the pivot action is nice and smooth. You push that button, and it just drops into the closed position. It's really nice. There's something about a wider or larger button being used to disengage a lock that's really satisfying. And the way that they've done this is really satisfying. It doesn't feel cheap or crunchy. It feels good, right? I mean, who doesn't like to push a button, right? It feels satisfying. That's nice. And the fact that it is not a plunge lock means that the locking system, is the setup here is much more reliable than something like a plunge lock. Even without engaging the safety, their liner lock has good geometry. Once you engage this safety switch back there, there's no way, because the lock cannot move over. It's not going to. What I like a lot about this safety, because I'm not always a huge fan of safeties. A lot of times your safety locking systems, which a lot of people will argue are just completely unnecessary in the first place. And I think there's validity to it. I think it's circumstantial though, and it goes model by model. There are definitely safety switches that I think create a problem, right? A lot of people, the common saying is that it's a solution looking for a problem. Okay. Again, though, that's circumstantial. Like that's a lazy way to blanket solve everything, and it just doesn't apply. I mean, I've handled a lot of knives, and that statement is 100% true for certain models and completely and totally false for others. In a situation where you have a safety system that, if you have a super duper weak lock and you're adding a safety, right? Then the issue is you just need a different locking system. And we saw that on the double plunge lock knife that I was looking at for artisan cutlery. They had a plunge lock, and then their solution to making it stronger was just adding a second plunge lock, which didn't end up working. Like it just needs to be a different locking system. This locking system is fine. What they wanted to do was actuate it via the pivot. And because putting that actuation on the pivot causes a potential issue with disengagement, they decided, let's add a safety. And I think this is okay. I think this is a fine way to do that, right? Because if you get too complicated with the locking system, then the price starts to go through the roof. So they're trying to accommodate for a lot of different people, and that's fine. They did not put the safety anywhere on the knife that would cause the safety to accidentally disengage, right? It's very small, very out of the way, right? The amount of pressure and the traction that would be needed to disengage it is at an angle, and it would require force that was very deliberate and not force that would generally be applied while you're using the knife, which is good, right? Because on a knife, if it has a safety to keep the locking system held in place in a situation where it could potentially disengage, if you're using the knife and you could potentially disengage the safety, then it's like, well, this is just a mess. We shouldn't have to be thinking about this stuff. We should be able to just get it out and use it, which is nice. That's one of the nice things, again, about this safety feature. If you don't care about it, if you're like, I don't own this knife, but I've been considering buying it, the safety means no difference to me, great. ignore it. Use the knife the way that you want to use it and literally ignore the safeties there. You will forget that it is there, right? For people who want to use it, engaging the safety takes a pretty substantial amount of force and deliberate force, right? So let me see if I can capture this. That's a lot better, way better than most of the safety systems that I've experienced. A lot of times they're anywhere from floppy, like just a joke. It's just like sliding back and forth and doing nothing. Or it requires such minimal effort that it makes me question, is this even doing anything, right? The amount of force required to get this back out of this position is substantial. There's no way that I'm going to accidentally disengage that safety, right? So now in a situation where I'm thinking like, I'm going to use this knife in a situation where I'm going to be bearing down on it, right? Not abusing it. This safety system should not imply to anyone, hey, you can now use this knife as a hammer or a pry bar. It is the optimal tool for batoning. For some reason, we live in a knife world where people see safety systems or additional locking mechanisms as essentially a green light to be a cave person with their tools. And I think that's horrifically irresponsible. The safety system is there to keep the lock from accidentally disengaging while you're choking up on the knife and bearing down on it, which, you're putting your finger on top of the button. Again, I know this is going to be said. Again, a lot of people are going to say, well, the issue is where you're disengaging the lock is on the pivot and it just shouldn't be there in the first place. Maybe for some people, but again, some people just like the idea of engaging and disengaging their knife via a pivot lock. It's just kind of fun. And this is an easy way. I mean, it is an incredibly simple way to allow those people to enjoy what they want to enjoy in a safe way, right? So if the knife's not for you, it's just not for you. It's not necessarily that they need to change it. It's just not for you. But I do like how they did this. And I like that the safety for once actually feels like it's doing something, right? It doesn't feel like I'm going to disengage it while I'm using it. So now I can use this knife in this situation where I think, hey, I'm going to bear down on it. It's time to go to work. I'm going to go ahead and engage that safety. And then I can do that and not feel like I'm going to disengage it. And it does. It does a great job. I mean, pushing this, it doesn't move. It's not like I push the button and it moves a little bit. No, it doesn't move at all. The liner lock cannot move over until you disengage that safety. Again, that doesn't make this an indestructible knife. It just makes the locking system completely and totally functional in the environment where you might be bearing down on it, right? So I think that's really cool. Areas where they still need to be more accommodating, definitely left-handed people. Sometimes with Remette knives, you get an option for lefty carry, and sometimes you don't. I understand that the pivot lock is on a side that would imply right hand manipulation, but as you just saw there, I can manipulate this knife very easily with my left hand despite being a right hand dominant person. So Remette, you gotta give left-handed people an option. I like that Remette is keeping most of their billboarding off of the blade. I think that's really cool. I also really, really like the blade on this knife. I think it's neat. They do that pearlescent, that's what they call it. They call it a pearlescent finish. It looks like some type of media blasting, right? Maybe ceramic or glass or something. I don't know. We have kind of this overcast finish on the blade and it looks really good. This is a Tanto, right? I mean, the utility of the blade is just going to come down to what you're using it for. You're going to be sharpening two different edges on this. It'd be nice to have a version of this knife that's just a continuous edge, right? Like a drop point or whatever, but this is also fine. Truthfully, just all the way around, this is cool for people who want to get something that has some fun and special. Again, it's not going to be for everybody. For people who want some of the shiny, more special surface finishes, right? For people who want titanium, for people who want to have a little bit of fidget factor in their tool, right? For people who want their tool to be a little bit more than just their simple cutting tool, which is most of what I show on this channel. You just want it to be a little bit more special, right? A little bit more fun. I do like that this knife can be both manipulated via the pivot and just like a regular liner lock. It's unnecessary, but it is cool. It is fun. I like that a lot. Everything about this knife feels solid. I mean, it feels completely and totally solid. It just has the additional, if you need it, not you have to engage it every time. Because again, it locks without the safety. It locks well enough for standard cutting tasks without the safety. The only time that you might want to engage the safety is if you're going to bear down on it, and that bearing down would cause your index finger to land right on top of the button. Many people pointed out to me that this just wasn't a realistic scenario for them. And in the time that I carried this knife, I would agree. It's not a scenario that pops up hardly at all, right? The only time that I found like, hey, I better go ahead and do that is going outside and breaking down cardboard with it, right? I want to have my index finger choked up and I want to put all that force into the part of the edge that's closer to my finger, right? Kind of this portion right here. In this situation, my index finger kind of hangs off of it a little bit, and I found I kind of dared myself a little bit. Like, let's go ahead and apply some pressure, right? It took a very specific hand position to get my finger to land on top of the pivot, and I found that it actually pushed my index finger uncomfortably close to the edge, which is something I would naturally adjust for anyway. However, I was still close enough that I thought, just given exactly the right situation and exactly the wrong amount of attention while I'm using the knife, there could be disengagement, right? I don't think the safety's not there because it's like you're going to need this all the time. You're going to need it every single time you use the knife. It's there so that you have the option. And if you don't care about it, you simply ignore it, because if I couldn't see and I was just feeling this knife over, I'd be like, yeah, this feels exactly the same as the other one. I might not even notice, right? The fact that they put it on there is cool for people who want to use it. And really, the fact that it's a legitimate safety, like that is, it takes a good amount of force to get it over there, and it is stuck in that position until you deliberately push it back to the other side, right? So again, if you already own, I said this was going to be a short video and it's not. If you already own the Peregrine Falcon, is it worth picking up the version with the safety? No, I think you're fine. Just be cognizant while you're using it, right? If you don't own this knife and you've been looking at it and you're considering like, is it worth picking this knife up? Yeah. This is a $245 knife. It's getting up there. It's definitely up over that $200 price point. But I think the effort of this versus your standard sandwich construction, pick your super steel, whatever. There's tons of companies out there making good $200 knives that are basically just, 2 pieces of titanium and a good blade that's heat treated pretty well, right? That's what you're going to get at $200. So if you're spending an additional $45, do the elements here equate to that additional markup? Yeah, I think so. I think this is a higher effort knife, but Remette, definitely start accommodating for left-handed people on all of your stuff, and maybe some different blade shapes. And also on this knife in particular, I think jimping out up to the thumb ramp would have been a really nice idea. But I think it's great that Remette is paying attention, and they will change models. Like, they will add things to past models. Instead of just forgetting about the model and moving on to the next thing, they'll go back and alter things. This is not the first time we've seen them do this, and it's not super common for companies to do this. Most of the time, companies are like, well, whatever, that was a fun project, moving on, and then they just forget about it forever. So it's kind of neat to see them do this and add little things for the people who care, right? None of these changes are going to apply to everybody or even be appealing to everybody, but it does matter for some people, and I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, this new version of it is actually really great. I like this knife, and I feel like it's got enough different about it versus the other things in the general competition zone that it's absolutely going to be worth it to some people. So if you haven't picked this knife up and you think it looks interesting, it's made incredibly well. It's got a reliable locking system. It's really fun. It's really fidgety. It's a good knife, right? The blade geometry is not going to be the thinnest, but it'll still slice and cut and do everything that you want it to do, and it'll put a smile on your face at the same time. So that's pretty much it for me today, guys. I really did intend for this to be like a 10-minute video, but as per usual, I just ended up having more to say. So anyways, I'll link this down in the description so that you can check it out. Thanks again to Remette for sending it in. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.